Breakthrough power refers to both technologies and also a philosophy of empowerment for the people. The technologies are a whole variety of really revolutionary approaches to getting our energy for electricity and for running cars and for heating our homes and greenhouses and running our businesses. Through inventions are little known by the people because they would get us out of the oil-based world economy, and there are vested interests who really don't want us to get out of the oil-based world economy while they're still gathering their fortunes. So that's why you hear the projection that, oh, exotic energy technologies might come in another 50 years, 2050, whatever. The quantum leap new energy inventions are a step farther away from us because they're not accepted by conventional science, and they're all still mostly all in the prototype form because it's new science and it's not accepted by most academics, and it's not written about in science magazines, mainstream science magazines, so it's as if it doesn't exist. But there's a whole field of inquiry, a field of research, a field of experimentation going on around the world. We're not talking about perpetual motion machines that create energy out of nothing, that miraculously overcome the laws of physics. We're talking about tapping into a previously unknown source of energy of some sort. And in that way, it's not violating any law of conservation of energy that says you can't get more output than the electrical or motion input. So we have a certain little tiny electrical input into some of these circuits, for example, and then the output is in the thousands of watts, enough to actually do work. We're not talking about the energy that comes out of splitting an atom apart, destroying an atom apart and releasing the power of the binding forces. That's destructive, and that's totally the opposite of the new energy technologies that I'm talking about. We're talking about working with the atom structure or working with the laws of nature on all levels and just tickling a little bit of that potential energy out of it in one way or another. So the atom may be reconfigured, but it's in a more harmonious way. For example, a company called Blacklight Power is doing some sort of molecular altering electrochemistry dealing with water so that the hydrogen atom is in a different form or is affected differently than in standard physics, and that the end result is more power output than it took to create the reaction. Way more power output. There are scientists who have given a lot of evidence that they really do understand what's going on with so-called free energy, and they are credible scientists who have the background, the degrees, but their theories are not accepted in the mainstream science journals yet. I believe that will come. But right now there are various words, various terminology been given to describe the background energy of the universe. The term more accepted in quantum physics, zero-point energy, may turn out to be a rather limiting terminology. It might just refer to effects rather than the background cause. But anyway, that's one that a lot are using because it's acceptable to their fellow scientists. And the range of words that's used to describe this background field of energy goes way back to some people who are tapping into old textbooks to come up with descriptions and using the term ether, which really carries a lot of baggage, so that's not the best term. And some people who are looking at the fact that in the health field, people are discovering that there is an unusual energy called life force energy or prana, or as the Orientals called it, chi. And so they're recognizing that there's more to what's going on, to the way the universe works, to the way our bodies interact with the background field of energy, more than you'll find in standard mainstream science journals. There's nothing wrong with developing harmonious means of tapping into the solar energy and tapping into wind energy and geothermal, and certainly nothing wrong with everybody doing all that they can for energy conservation while we're in a transition period, especially trying to get off of our dependence on fossil fuels. So there's nothing wrong with those approaches, except as far as getting off of the fossil fuel dependency, they haven't made enough inroads, and we have to make a lot faster progress in getting off our dependency on oil and proving that it is totally unnecessary to have nuclear fission power plants. More dramatic progress is needed than we have now. We do have progress in the development of those alternatives, and it's considered the place to invest. Green technology is big. That gold rush or green rush is mostly because there's money to be made in investing in some of these fields, because they're going to be getting carbon credits, or it's all about manipulating the market. And I'm not criticizing any efforts to use solar energy or wind energy, but I'm just pointing out that there are more efficient ways to go that don't require as much material resources or land or the huge windmill blades that take a couple of semi-trucks to haul one blade. This uses up a lot of fossil fuel just in getting them up into the sky. And a lot of people are finding that those huge towers are rather invasive in the landscape. They're noisy. They're just really not the best way to go, but people are accepting them because it seems like that's the best that can be offered. The fact is, there are breakthroughs even in wind power wherein you could have the same amount of efficiency, the same amount of output in something that's small and quiet. So there's money to be made in mega projects, but it's short-term money. The jobs aren't always lasting jobs. They're maybe the crane operator one-time job, and the transport hauling in the huge tower and the blades. But it's really not the way that our society, which is financially challenged right now, is going to solve this energy supply and clean energy problem fast enough. There's a variety of types of inventions that are quite different from each other and varied in how close they are to standard engineering and how far out they are in new science. Closer to standard engineering, we could start with a really revolutionary way to tap into the power of riptides, ocean tides. Blue Energy Canada, for instance, has a turbine that's low impact on the environment relatively for a large project like that. And then all the way across the spectrum to, to solid state electronic circuits that use the principle of resonance to magnify their output, to amplify the amount of electricity that they put out. And because they are tapping into the background energy of the universe, they're quite in the opposite end of the spectrum. And then somewhere in between, we have the various water as fuel approaches, splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen in a much more efficient way than is talked about in any standard textbooks, and also at the point of use. So this would mean a hydrogen economy that doesn't rely on a huge, expensive infrastructure that takes a lot of materials and a lot of trucking, tanker trucks. We don't need to truck the hydrogen. We don't need to store it in storage tanks. We don't need to pipe hydrogen pipelines, because it is possible to do the job of breaking up the water right at point of use. The new hydrogen economy that I'm seeing that have been described to me by the people working in the field can also clean up polluted water. It doesn't necessarily need a lot of water from the tap water even. The amount of water that will be needed is not going to make our water scarcity problem worse. It could in fact contribute to cleaning up rivers and sources of pollution. There are various approaches and various theories as to how we can use the power of magnetism for new energy devices and systems. One way that some are looking at it is that the powerful permanent magnets themselves continuously tap into this background field of universal energy, and that's how they maintain their strength even though they're doing work, and supposedly something can't continue to do work for years and years and years, lifting 100 times its own weight without being depleted. But if at atomic level they are tapping into the background energy of the universe, then that can explain how that can work. There are also explanations that are just more mechanical, that if you have a configuration of rotating magnets past coils or the way around it more efficiently, getting rid of the back electromotive force, the force that fights against the motors, then it's possible to have super efficient magnetic generators. So there isn't agreement on exactly what's going on, but there are proof of principle prototype devices that show that it is possible to build a magnetic motor generator that puts out more than it takes to get the thing going and started. Solid state is a term that refers to no moving parts. So the electronic circuits that use the principle of resonance to have more output than input would be considered solid state. It's just a matter of using the latest in switching circuitry parts, and just using the principles that have been known for a long time, but some of those principles have been purposely kept out of the system because they were considered to be a problem. And now, instead of looking at some of these effects as problems, then these innovative engineers are doing things differently to amplify the resonances or whatever is creating more output in their circuits. There are definitely conventionally engineered inventions that are considered breakthroughs by my co-author Joel Garvin and myself and the new energy community, because the aim of our efforts is not to just go with unconventional or non-conventional science for the sake of being non-conventional, but rather to break out of this gridlock of being tied into the energy scarcity, oil-based, fossil fuel-based economy that's keeping us limited in what we can do and what we can afford to do and how we can afford to clean up the planet. So the conventional engineering, anything from a Tesla turbine, that's a bladeless type of turbine, but it's just doing things a lot more intelligently. And that can be coupled with geothermal power. The excess energy comes from some type of background energy of the universe that's being studied. And an example of a way to think about it might be the sun. If we step out into the clearing where the sun's really shining right down on us and we feel warmer, that's a type of radiant energy from the sun. There are other types of radiant energy. There are other types of energy coming in from the cosmos all the time. And this is a field of study that's in its in its infancy as far as being in mainstream journals. There are mainstream journals that talk about zero-point energy, but they don't go so far as to say that this is something that could be powering your house. And the term zero-point energy might just be talking about an effect rather than a cause, just like if we said that we can tap into the power of leaves fluttering on a tree. That would be kind of silly, because actually wind power isn't tapping into the power that's generated by little leaves fluttering. Rather, it's the wind that hits the blades. And the same, we may be looking at little quantum fluctuations of the vacuum of space, they call it, the zero-point energy, which may be fluctuations that are actually caused by some more primal underlying energy. That's one theory that I run into, and makes a lot of sense to me, because the amount of power that comes out of some of the non-conventional prototypes that aren't publicized, but that my colleagues have seen in operation, and I've seen in smaller scale in operation, is an amount of power that's enough to do work, no doubt about it. We're talking about kilowatts. We have enough abundant low-cost power to clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up on this planet, whether it be the soil or the water in our rivers, which could be cleaned up by some of the hydrogen-related technologies. And we'll have a prosperous economy, both regionally and nationally, internationally, when this is all allowed to blossom and flourish, so that we can afford to have people working at jobs that are for the benefit of all. They're cleaning up the environment and feeding the hungry. Problems that society has that are to do with behavior rather than technology, as you know. But a technology that's working in harmony with nature and providing an abundant source of clean, low-cost power to do work for the people of the planet is a way out of the situation that we're in now, because it will no longer be possible to convince people that we have to fight oil wars. It'll be no longer possible to convince people that we have to build nuclear power plants, so we have no other option. This is all untrue. And when the truth comes out, then so many things that are done in the name of we have no choice, we have no option, we have to keep on drilling for oil, will be shown to be nonsense. And what it will require is for the people to get involved and make sure that we do have a higher civilization created with the powerful new energy technologies, and that they're used for the good, that they're used to clean up the air so that we can go jogging down a city street past all sorts of transport, whatever we're using for transport, without coughing and choking. That the air will be clean as it is in this beautiful forest anywhere. And that we won't have to have the forest cut down for some of the things that they're being cut down for now, because with some of the new energy technologies, it's possible to create new materials. The field that's been discounted as cold fusion have also shown transmutations of elements. And so this just opens up the possibilities of a civilization that's creating its buildings out of materials that may be beautiful and translucent and colored, whatever, and strong, earthquake-proof, whatever we need, whatever we want, whatever we can imagine, whatever the most visionary architects can build, without cutting down trees. There are so many things that are possible with new energy technology used wisely, and we could eventually travel to the stars. It's not a cure-all, and it's not going to happen overnight. I'm sure that we're going through some chaotic times, and they're not going to end immediately. But if people can just hold the vision and work toward a united human family that's going to be so determined to use new technologies wisely because the old greed-based decisions have made such a mess of our planet. That's what it's going to take to build a higher civilization, is enough people who are just so fed up with what's been happening that they're going to say, this is where we're going to take a stand and take action and make sure that we're responsible members of the human family, that we're all going to pay attention to energy technologies and not consider that it's just a field that belongs to the guys with the hard hats and the experts in the academic ivory towers and the corporate decision makers and the government decision makers. You know, we've just kind of passed it off and passively lived our lives as if it's all being taken care of. Well, it's been taken care of for the benefit of a relatively small group of people on this planet who are financially benefiting from the polluting energy technologies. And I think the grassroots realization that that has to stop is building to the point where enough people, a critical mass of people, will and are standing up for positive change and for taking responsibility. I'd like to start with a quote from a Nobel Prize-winning New York Times writer, economist Paul Krugman, from his latest book. Yes, there is an interlocking set of institutions ultimately answering to a small group of people that collectively reward loyalists and punish dissenters. These institutions provide obedient politicians with the resources to win elections, safe havens in the event of defeat, and lucrative career opportunities after they leave office. They guarantee favorable news coverage to politicians who follow the party line while harassing and undermining opponents. And they support a large standing army of intellectuals and activists. The answer to the question also should deal with factors ranging from individual inventors shooting themselves in the foot or by their foolish actions, or becoming embittered by the way that they're treated and they end up dying with their secrets kept to themselves, not shared, all the way down the line or up the line to the academic world, where there are also, in a way, vested interests. You wouldn't think that there would be anything but purity of seeking for knowledge in the academic world, but there's actually a little bit of fear of change, because a sector like hot fusion physicists have gotten millions of dollars in grants every year, and it's threatening to consider that perhaps some new energy science might be coming out of nowhere. There's resistant to change in the government because there are tax revenues that come from gasoline taxes and drilling leases, and that's a huge amount of revenue, which could be supplanted by governments having a lot more money to spend when they don't fight oil wars, and a lot more money to spend when the healthcare costs are not so high because children in inner cities aren't suffering asthma because of the polluting fuel exhaust. So there's just a whole range of reasons why these new energy technologies haven't come out, and there's all sorts of tricks that are used to cause the inventors to stumble, to cause their businesses to fail in ways that they never recover from. And we can go into these different areas of this question in another video, which will come later.